For the past couple of years, I've been pulling the graveyard shift as a maintenance tech at an old factory on the outskirts of the city. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, and there's something oddly comforting about the solitude. The factory used to churn out machinery parts back in the day, but now it's mostly automated, with just a skeleton crew during the day and me alone at night. I fix whatever breaks, check the machines, and make sure everything's running smooth until morning. Most nights it's dead quiet, just the low rumble of conveyor belts and the occasional hiss of steam vents. I like it that way. No bosses breathing down my neck, no distractions. But then there's Elias, the part-time mechanic who overlaps with my shift for a few hours. He's in his mid-60s, with a scraggly beard and eyes that always seem to dart around like he's expecting trouble. From the start, he gave me the creeps, not because he was rude, but because he had this habit of lingering in the shadows, humming tuneless melodies under his breath. At first, I chalked it up to him being eccentric. Factories attract all types, right? He'd nod hello when we crossed paths in the break room, but his smiles never reached his eyes. Over time, though, the oddities piled up. One evening, I was repairing a faulty assembly line on the 3rd floor when I spotted him in the far corner of the room. The overhead lights were out for maintenance, so the only illumination came from my headlamp. He wasn't working. He was just crouched by an old storage crate, his back to me, whispering to himself. I called out, "Hey, Elias, need a hand?" No response. He kept muttering, his voice like gravel scraping against metal. I watched for a minute, the beam from my lamp casting his shadow long and twisted against the wall. It looked wrong, too elongated, like it didn't match his frame. I shook it off and went back to my tools, but when I glanced up again, he was gone. No footsteps, no door creak, just vanished. That incident stuck with me, but I told myself it was the fatigue talking. Night shifts mess with your head. The constant hum of machines can make you hear things that aren't there. Still, Elias started showing up in places he shouldn't. The factory has restricted zones, like the boiler room in the basement. Off limits without clearance. I'd catch glimpses of him down there through the grated vents, fiddling with pipes that didn't need fixing. Once, during a routine check, I found the door to the old employee lockers propped open. Inside, tools were scattered, and there was a faint smell of rust and something sharper, like old blood. Elias's toolkit was there, but no sign of him. I started avoiding him, sticking to my rounds and keeping my radio on for company. Then the malfunctions began. Machines I'd just serviced would glitch, belts slipping, gears grinding to a halt. I'd review the logs and everything checked out, but it felt targeted. One night, around 3 a.m., I was in the control room monitoring the panels when the lights dimmed. The backup generator kicked in, but not before I saw a silhouette on the security feed. Elias, standing motionless in the loading bay, staring straight at the camera. His face was pale, eyes unblinking. The feed crackled and he was gone. I radioed him. No answer. Heart pounding, I grabbed my wrench and headed down. The bay was empty, but the air felt charged, like static before a storm. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next shift, I cornered him in the tool shed. "What's your deal, Elias? Why are you always lurking?" He turned slowly, his expression blank. "Just doing my job," he murmured, his voice flat. But his eyes, they gleamed with something dark, like amusement. That night, the real nightmare unfolded. I was inspecting the furnace when I heard scratching from behind a sealed-off wall panel. Curiosity won out. I pried it open with a crowbar. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, dusty and forgotten. My flashlight revealed stacks of old blueprints, faded photos, and worse. Rusted chains, stained cloths, and what looked like bone fragments. In the center, a crumpled journal with Elias's name scrawled inside. Entries about keeping the old ones quiet, and sketches of factory workers from decades ago, their faces crossed out. Panic surged as the panels slammed shut behind me. I whirled, flashlight beam catching Elias in the doorway. "You found my collection?" he said softly, stepping closer. His face twisted into a grin that didn't belong on a human. "The factory remembers its debts." I shoved past him, adrenaline fueling my escape through the maze of pipes and ducts. He pursued, his steps unnaturally silent, whispering about sacrifices and the machine's hunger. I burst into the main hall, barricading myself in the office and calling the authorities. They found the crawl space, the items linking to unsolved disappearances from the factory's heyday. Elias vanished without a trace. I quit on the spot. Months later, I still hear that scratching in my dreams, and sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if the factory's still claiming its due. Switching gears to another tale from the shadows. I never thought I'd end up as the overnight clerk at a rundown motel off the interstate. The pay was decent for minimal effort. Check in the occasional trucker, handle the vending machines, and keep an eye on the lot. The motel was a relic from the 70s, with peeling wallpaper and rooms that smelled of stale smoke. Days were busy with travelers, but nights? It was a ghost town. Just the neon sign buzzing outside and the distant roar of semis. I enjoyed the peace at first, reading books under the desk lamp while the world slept. But solitude has a way of amplifying the unknown. It started subtly. I'd hear doors creaking open and shut down the hall, even when all rooms were vacant. I'd check the registry, empty. Blaming the wind, I'd ignore it. Then came the phone calls. The front desk line would ring around 1 a.m. But when I answered, only static greeted me, interspersed with faint breathing. I traced it once. It came from room 17, which hadn't been booked in weeks. Curiosity got the better of me one night. I grabbed the master key and headed down the dimly lit corridor. The air grew colder near the door, my breath fogging despite the summer heat. Inside, the room was pristine. Bed made, no dust. But on the nightstand sat an old rotary phone, receiver off the hook. As I hung it up, the mirror fogged, and in the mist, a handprint appeared. Not mine. Shaken, I returned to the desk, but the incidents escalated. Shadows flitted past the windows, too tall and fluid to be human. One shift, a late check-in arrived. A disheveled woman named Clara, eyes wide with exhaustion. She paid cash for room 9 and vanished upstairs. Hours later, screams echoed from her room. I rushed up, pounding on the door. No answer. Forcing entry, I found the room empty, bed untouched, her bag gone. But the walls, faint scratches like nails dragging down the paint. The next morning, the manager dismissed it as a prank, but I knew better. Digging into the motel's history, I uncovered a tragedy. Decades ago, a guest had vanished from room 17, presumed a runaway. Rumors whispered of more. Travelers who checked in but never out. The shadows grew bolder. I'd feel icy fingers brush my arm in the lobby, hear whispers calling my name. One fateful night, the power flickered, plunging the motel into darkness. The phone rang from every room simultaneously. Heart racing, I barricaded the desk as doors slammed in unison. In the blackout, a figure materialized in the lobby mirror, pale, translucent, reaching out. "Join us," it rasped. I fled into the night, quitting via voicemail. The motel still stands, luring the weary. But I warn you, some places hold on to their guests forever. Now let's talk about my stint as a late-night attendant at a remote gas station. Tucked along a forgotten highway, it was the last stop for miles. Pumps glowing under harsh fluorescence, a small store stocked with snacks and maps. I took the job for the quiet. Days were hectic with commuters, but nights brought isolation. Just me and the occasional motorist. I'd stock shelves, count change, and watch the stars through the grimy windows. Harmless, right? Until the visitors started. It began with flickering lights. The bulbs would dim, then surge, casting erratic shadows. I'd check the fuses. Fine. Then came the knocks on the glass door after closing time. Peering out, I'd see no one, just empty pavement stretching into the dark. One night around 2 a.m., a car pulled up, an old sedan, engine silent. No driver emerged. I watched from inside unease building. After minutes, it drove off without fueling. Weird, but explainable. The real terror hit when the figures appeared. First, a silhouette at the edge of the lot, unmoving under the street lamp. I'd blink and it'd be closer. Radio static would blare from the speakers, voices murmuring incoherently. I installed extra lights, but it didn't help. One shift, the pumps activated on their own, gasoline spilling like blood. Cleaning up, I found footprints in the puddle. Bare, leading to the store. Inside, shelves rattled, cans tumbling. I hid in the back room, heart thundering as whispers grew. Stay with us. Research revealed the station's dark past. A hit and run years back, victims never identified. Ghosts of the road, they said. The climax came during a storm, power out, thunder roaring. The figures surrounded the store, pale faces pressing against the glass. I escaped through the rear, never returning. That station's cursed. Drive past if you can. Finally, my days as an overnight cab driver in the bustling city. Picking up fares after dark paid well. No traffic. Big tips from bar hoppers. I'd cruise neon-lit streets, radio crackling with dispatches. Easy money until the peculiar passengers. One rainy night,